Hello and welcome to another HR Grapevine webinar. We're delighted to have a new partner on board this month. As you can see from the slide in front of you, they're a company called TextHelp, and you'll want to keep an eye on these guys because they're doing some really interesting stuff around neurodiversity across the entire world. In operation for over 20 years with locations as diverse as Belfast, Boston and Brisbane, TextHelp work across a variety of different industries and sectors, including FTSE 500 companies like Asda, ITV, Network Rail and Virgin Group, as well as in the public sector and fourth sector as well. So we've got some government, health and not-for-profit partnerships, which they have as well. So they really do have a wide purview and an impressive range of 20 million users of their software worldwide. Working alongside partners as well as big as Google's and your Microsoft's, TextHelp's award-winning products such as their read and write and browse aloud softwares have changed the lives of millions of workers worldwide. So this webinar that TextHelp have partnered with us on is going to present the opportunity to discuss ideas to attract, support and retain a diverse workforce. As we live in a diverse society, successful organizations are increasingly recognizing the benefits of having a diverse workforce. Embracing and supporting diversity, including neurodiversity, can help companies to reach out to and attract staff from a wider talent pool, with new ways of thinking and problem solving emerging as a result. As we all know, a diverse workforce is also better equipped to engage more effectively with a diverse customer base seeking diverse solutions. And we all know as well that businesses that fail to embrace diversity within inclusive workplaces risk finding themselves unable to attract and retain the kind of customers, employees and business partners that will constitute our changing world in the next 5 to 10 years. In this webinar, we're proud to be able to share with you a real example of a large corporate organisation here in the UK, which is successfully making diversity and particularly neurodiversity work for them in order to deliver tangible business benefits. And it's one that's instantly recognizable as well. As you can see from the slide in front of you, it is Network Rail. But before we hear from Network Rail and their success story, let me hand over to you for two of our presenters today, Nicola Branner and Louise McQuillian from TextHelp. So ladies, over to you.
Hello everyone, thank you Dan so much for that great introduction. So we're going to try and keep the webinar as interactive as possible today. So we have some time for Q&A later on, but we're going to kick off with a poll just to start things. So how many of you have heard of the term neurodiversity? Please answer me or not me, and please take some time to select your answer and then you guys can hit the submit button. So I'm just going to pause here for a few seconds and then we'll read off the answers for those who'll be listening later on.
So as usual, guys, we are kicking off with a poll. If you can see in front of you, there should be a slide now that says how many of you on the webinar have heard of the term neurodiversity. Just 2 answers. So if you'd like to get involved, I'll keep it open for about 20 more seconds and then we can share the results. So just about 10 more seconds, I can see about 85% of you have voted. I'll give you a few more seconds. So we can see that about 61%, so almost 2/3 of the audience here today have heard of the term. Is this what you expected to find?
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty new term, so don't worry if you guys haven't heard of it. So basically in today's modern workforce, organizations pride themselves on having a diverse and inclusive workplace when it comes to things like age and gender, sexuality and ethnicity. And I suppose over the last kind of 30 years, bold business leadership has played a crucial role in driving social change and advancing equality in these areas. But the idea of a neurodiverse workplace is still quite new. So what is neurodiversity? Well, a non-exhaustive list might include things like dyslexia, autism, Asperger's, dyspraxia, ADHD, and a whole host of others. The most common of these is dyslexia, and about 10% of the UK population has dyslexia and 4% severely so. So neurodiversity is the natural range of difference in brain functions, Globally, the awareness of neurodiversity is increasing. This may be through increased diagnosis of conditions, celebrities sharing their experiences. For example, think of Sir Richard Branson and his dyslexia blogs. The fact that neurodiversity is being looked at from a different perspective, where unique strengths as well as challenges are being realised, or perhaps through companies like Network Rail who are searching for that competitive advantage through innovation and creativity. So about 1.5 million adults in the UK have ADHD, but only 120,000 are formally diagnosed. An ADHD diagnosis for adults can take 7 years, which is actually quite shocking. So autism is much more common than people think. There are around 700,000 people on the autism spectrum in the UK, so that's more than 1 in 1,001. And if you include their families, autism is part of daily life for 2.8 million people. So according to the National Autistic Society, 70% of autistic adults say that they're not getting the help they need from social services, and 70% of autistic adults also told the National Autistic Society that with more support they would feel less isolated. So again, according to the National Autistic Society, only 16% of autistic adults in the UK are in full-time paid employment, and only 32% are in some kind of paid work. I suppose there's a range of reasons for this. For example, people with autism often have symptoms that get in the way of successful interviewing or managing the physical requirements of the workplace, or indeed engaging successfully with work teams. So further to this, only 10% of autistic adults receive employment support, but 53% say they want it. The disparity here between those receiving employment support and those that would like it could be a result of the unwillingness of the individual to disclose their disability because of the stigma associated, or possibly because the employer is unaware of what support is available to help these individuals to thrive in the workplace. These type of non-apparent disabilities are more understood now than just a few years ago, and organisations are starting to become aware of the variety of exceptional skills that enable neurodiverse individuals to thrive in roles ranging from sales assistant to computer programmer and journalist to statistician, to name a few. Therefore, organisations are growing acutely aware of the importance of ensuring work environments are welcoming to neurodiverse staff. And I think it's worth noting here actually that adjustments or considerations that organisations can make to help support neurodiverse colleagues, including, for example, a more transparent recruitment process or improved communication channels, will also benefit your neurotypical staff too. So employers are beginning to learn that they need the benefits that diversity can bring. Even though neurodiverse individuals may not do well in a traditional interview format, they still have lots to bring to the table, including the ability to approach problems from a different angle and consider innovative solutions to business challenges. In other words, it's easier for them to think outside of the box. Similarly, people on the dyslexia spectrum may be a good fit for careers in the creative industries due to their unique strengths in interpreting and visualizing designs. Autistic people too are disproportionately skilled in data analysis and IT related tasks compared to their neurotypical counterparts. And we'll look at some of these organisations later in the webinar that are actively recruiting neurodiverse individuals to capitalise on their unique skills. So embracing neurodiversity and disability confidence can help firms to capture new markets or demonstrate relevance to clients and consumers and build their brands. Promoting disability confidence is central to attracting and retaining talent and can confer significant productivity benefits to an organisation. And just recently, a study basically undertaken by HPE and reported on in the Harvard Business Review found that neurodiverse teams are around 30% more productive than neurotypical teams. A further HBR study exploring the correlation between cognitive diversity and performance using the AEM cube, which assesses differences in the way people approach change, showed a significant correlation between high cognitive diversity within teams and high performance. So if anyone on the webinar would like a wee copy of either articles, please just let us know and we can send them on. So moving on, high-profile business people, politicians and celebrities have spoken openly about their neurodiversity, such as Apple co-founder Steve Jobs or Oprah Winfrey or HP co-founder William Hewlett. Prominent examples of neurodiverse individuals making their mark on the C-suite and in part crediting their rise to the benefits of their neurodiversity clearly shows how alternative thinking styles can make real business impact. Many of the world's most successful business people will tell you that the difference between success and failure in business comes down to your staff. So look at Richard Branson here. He has famously said, clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. And I suppose taking this one step further, researchers at Harvard have found that if employees in an organization have more negative perceptions of their organization at one point in time, the bottom line of the company is likely to be weaker in the future. So if it is people that make the difference between a business success and failure, then those people need to be different from those that your competitors have. So those people need to have unique talents and skill sets, and we as business leaders need to harness those talents and optimize what they can deliver into our business, making us different and better than our competitors. So many people on the neurodiverse spectrum have higher than average abilities. Research shows that some conditions, including autism and dyslexia, can bestow special skills in things like pattern recognition, memory, or mathematics. In addition, studies suggest neurodiverse individuals can possess talents in lateral or creative thinking, problem solving, the ability to connect ideas, deep concentration, and communication skills. So with this in mind, I can almost guarantee that if you were pulling together your dream team to innovate on a new product or service, you would look for individuals with these talents. Yet those affected often struggle to fit the profile sought by prospective employers. Therefore, to fully realise the benefits of neurodiverse talent, most organisations would have to adjust their recruitment, selection, career development policies to reflect the broader definition of talent. So let's have a look at individuals who demonstrate these talents in themselves and have gone on to become extremely successful and recognised in their fields. So take Steve Jobs here, for example. Steve Jobs didn't just innovate new products. His energy and passion and his communication skills, his ability to connect ideas, problem solve, and to think outside the box completely revolutionised the way that the world communicates verbally and visually, how it accesses and consumes music, and captures and shares images and memories. His inventions have transformed how we communicate with each other and the world around us, and he's turned the internet into something, I suppose, that was previously static and fixed, into something that we carry around in our pockets so that we can share and retrieve information on the go. And not only that, his innovations sparked the creation of other innovations to the extent that by 2021, 40% of the world's population is projected to own a smartphone. So thinking of Steve and others on this slide deck and considering these skills and talents that can make our businesses more competitive, what do all of these people have in common? And the answer is neurodivergence. So in fact, studies suggest that 15% of people in the UK have some form of a neurodivergent condition, which just further highlights the increasing need for organisations to reform their HR processes in order to access neurodivergent talent. And this statistic supports the fact that we live in an increasingly diverse society, and successful businesses are ones which recognise this and reflect diversity of the public they serve in the staff that they employ. And this sentiment is really echoed by Thomas Crampton, who is the Global Chair of Digital at Edelman. In a recent EY study, basically in his report, his assessment that the business community has a terrible record at integrating people with disabilities, even though the business case for inclusion is crystal clear. He cites news organisations as an example. Their role is to follow and interpret what is going on in the world, a world in which 1 in 7 people has a disability. So if you don't have people with disabilities on staff, how could you possibly understand the experiences of a significant portion of the population? We design our organisations for neurotypical people. We measure everyone against the same standard performance measures, but as business leaders, we need to think differently about different thinking, because neurodiversity can certainly transform the fortunes of organisations. So here is a map of neurodiversity, so the conditions within neurodiversity and some of the challenges commonly presented. In education terms, these challenges would be referred to, I suppose, as specific learning difficulties. There's no one type. And as found in Achievability Employment Report Survey, individuals are more likely to have 2 or more neurodivergent labels. So it's much more productive for workplaces to think of neurodivergence as a whole rather than putting individual labels on things. In contrast, here is a more positive image, an image that looks at the skills, talents, and traits of neurodivergent individuals that they commonly possess. And looking at these unique strengths, you can see how particular organisations and roles could greatly benefit from one or more of these strengths. So organisations are increasingly recognising that the workplace strengths that neurodivergent individuals commonly possess far outweigh the workplace challenges, and a growing number of leading organisations have revolutionised their talent management processes to attract, support and retain neurodiverse talent, including organisations like Willis Towers Watson, Ford and EY. SAP has one of the longest running neurodiversity programs actually. It's been running for about 4 years. And according to an HBR study, managers at SAP say the program is already paying off in ways far beyond reputational enhancement. So I suppose those ways would include things like productivity gains or quality improvement and boosts in innovations and capabilities. And in my role at TextHelp, I've had the great privilege of working with organisations like Network Rail that who are really embracing neurodiverse talent. So let's have a quick look at GCHQ and BBC, who are harnessing the values of neurodiversity. GCHQ have actively seek to recruit spies and code breakers who have dyslexia and similar neurodiverse conditions. They basically recognise that the dyslexic brain has a unique ability to solve complex problems and see situations from a different perspective. The BBC, on the other hand, has realised that individuals with autism can make excellent software and technology developers. The ability of deep concentration, fine detail processing, and extraordinary attention to detail makes people with autism ideal candidates for these roles. So we're just going to move on to the next slide, which it looks at one of our Read and Write users, Jonathan Levine. So I'll let you guys read this slide in full in your own time. And I just really wanted to pull out one sort of key thing that Jonathan had highlighted. So Jonathan stated that if he could use only one literacy app, Read and Write would definitely be the one that he would choose. And then just moving on to the next slide, we have Fui Amivore here, who is another user of Read and Write. He is an entrepreneur and has really benefited through the use of Read and Write through his professional career. But please do read Fui's story in full in your own time, and we'll just skip past that one just for now. So how are businesses harnessing neurodiversity for their workforce for competitive advantage? It really comes down to the way that they find and recruit talent, how they support staff to overcome challenges and let their full abilities really be realised. Especially in large organisations, HR processes, they're developed with an eye towards wide application across the organisation, but there's a conflict between scalability and the goal of acquiring neurodiverse talent. So the behaviours of many neurodiverse people run counter to common notions of what makes a good employee, you know, things like solid communication skills or being a team player or emotional intelligence and persuasiveness, the ability to network or sort of conform to standard practices without special accommodations and so on. So these criteria systematically screen out neurodiverse people. So what can we do as employers to make sure that we don't miss these opportunities? So this leads us on quite nicely to our next poll. So we've been discussing really throughout the webinar how important it is for employers to nurture a culture where workers sort of can disclose their condition with the confidence that they'll be supported. And one way to do this is to proactively make adaptations that will benefit neurodiverse employees and just demonstrate a willingness really to remove potential barriers at work. And Louise and Lorraine are very kindly going to be talking about workplace adjustments and how they can help to support and develop neurodiverse teams. But this, just for this exercise, we really just want to gain a better understanding of what great work you guys are all doing to support your staff. Okay, so let's hit it off here with the second poll. So has your organisation implemented any of these? Sorry, Dan.
No, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So has your organisation implemented any of these workplace adjustments? If you have implemented more than one of the adjustments, just select all of the appropriate answers and take some time to select your answers now and submit, press the submit button. And again, I'm just going to pause here for a few seconds.
So from the voting, I can see that probably the most usual adjustment is creating quiet spaces and then the ergonomics of the staff networks and building adjustments, which I guess maybe, if not the easiest, are the most obvious ones because they're about the physical space.
Yeah.
Is it right in thinking that?
Absolutely, and I suppose it's probably worth noting here as well, guys, that if you're still sort of in the exploratory stages of implementing adjustments and things, that's okay too. And hopefully this exercise of just looking at some of the more common ones has given you some food for thoughts. And just touching, I suppose, on staff networks, this is something that Network Rail has done really, really excellently, and something that Lorraine is definitely going to delve a little bit deeper into. But we have found that organisations that we have worked with, staff networks are a great way to bring people together, from across the organisation, and gives them a safe space really to share ideas and generate positive dialogue. And that's really what it's all about. And I suppose getting kind of senior leadership buy-in to those support staff networks really shows that they are committed to diversity and inclusion, and they have to show that they're really listening to the outcomes of those sessions and taking actions about recommendations that staff networks are recommending, basically, and not just paying lip service to the diversity and inclusion agenda. So I think that's a really, really important one, guys. And I suppose as well, the quiet spaces are, one of these kind of universal accommodations. So yes, neurodiverse individuals benefit massively from quiet spaces, and it gives them time to focus and concentrate on different tasks. It's also a universal accommodation. I mean, we all kind of want quiet space to go away and focus and really drill down and do some kind of deep work. So absolutely, and it's great to see those results coming through from you guys. And like I said, don't worry if you haven't put any of these in place. It just gives us a really good space to kind of discuss different opportunities. So thanks for everyone for taking part in that. And I think it's important to note as well that reasonable adjustments required for neurodiverse workers, and they'll be specific to each of the individual's needs. So it's really imperative that they're involved in determining the reasonable adjustments that are appropriate for them. But it's really this type of positive conversation that helps to build a more kind of holistic support system for these individuals. So without further ado, let me now introduce to you the great Lorraine Martins, Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Network Rail. Lorraine is going to explain how Network Rail embraces diversity and inclusion, how they support their neurodiverse staff members, which includes the use of our assistive technology tool, Read and Write, and ultimately how they're creating advantage by harnessing neurodiversity. Lorraine, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for that comprehensive introduction. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Network Rail and the size of our company and our approach to diversity and inclusion overall. So Network Rail is responsible for the infrastructure for the whole of the UK. We've got something like 20 managed stations. So if you think of the big stations like Birmingham, New Street, Leeds, Manchester, Piccadilly, and in London, we've got all of the major stations from Euston to Paddington, Waterloo and London Bridge. We have something like 4 million passengers daily. And so we're really quite key to the infrastructure of the country, really. We move people from A to B and freight. So if any of you have ordered anything on Amazon lately, I'm sure it's had some connection with our railway. We have a workforce of about 39,000 employees, of which 83% are male, 8% are Black, Asian and minority ethnic people, 1% from our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, and about 2% in our disabled. And we know that 2% is not representative of the working population that's available in terms of disabled employees. So for Network Rail, we've tried to take quite a broad approach, a strategic approach to integrating diversity and inclusion. And we have called our strategy Everyone, because what we wanted to help our workforce understand, which is a traditional male environment that are quite used to doing engineering activities and being operatives and fixing things. Their pathology might be that diversity and inclusion would have very little to do with them. So we were quite deliberate in saying that actually every single person is impacted by diversity and inclusion. From a legislative point of view, they talk about the protected characteristics, and all of us have protected characteristics. So whether you're male or you're female or you're black or you're white or you're LBGT or disabled or non-disabled, we are all protected by the legislation. And that was a useful way to try and engage people in appreciating why diversity and inclusion was important to us as a business. Similarly, we've got an aging workforce, and we also have a skills shortage. So we really do need to try and appeal to as wide an audience as possible in terms of coming to join us and work for Network Rail. So the key question then for us in terms of diversity and inclusion is not only about our own workforce, but also who are we serving. And as I mentioned earlier, everybody is connected by rail. So whether you use rail for travel to work or for leisure or for play, or as I said, you're ordering your white goods or whatever freight might need to ferry your goods at some stage, there will be a connection to rail. We also are clear that there are barriers and impediments to utilising our rail infrastructure, particularly on our stations. And so we've been quite keen to think about how our disabled passengers specifically encounter our service and how we could do better by our disabled passengers. And part of that then is using the intelligence that we have of our disabled employees to inform what we might do on our rail infrastructure. So looking at disability has been a really crucial part of our approach to diversity and inclusion. And so on this slide that you see, we've got three kind of key aspects, and I'll start with the disability confident leader. So a disability, we're really proud to be a disability confident leader, I should say that from the outset, but you have to be quite rigorous in your approach and your policies to become a disability confident leader. And this was the old program that the DWP, the Department of Works and Pensions, had, which used to be called the 2 ticks project. It's now disability confident. So what this means is that we guarantee interviews to disabled people who meet the essential criteria for any of the roles that we have. And so we promote this on our website, on our jobs pages, and we last year, at the end of last year, 2018, we were the #1 inclusive employer for disabled employees, particularly around our recruitment practices. So we're really proud of that, and that's put pressure on us to maintain that position. But it means that the processes that we have, particularly around recruitment. So what this means is that we guarantee disabled candidates an interview as long as they meet the criteria for the jobs, and we're really proud of that, and we've seen quite a good response to that process. The picture in the middle is of our inclusive design strategy, and it's called Spaces and Places for Everyone. And this is sets out how we will make our built environment inclusive of all people. So by design, taking out those barriers and impediments that can hinder a person's journey, and particularly for our disabled passengers. And then the final picture is of Can Do, which is our disabled employees network. And they're really crucial to us. Nicola mentioned that earlier about the importance of employee networks. And I think Can Do a couple of things really, really well. One is hold a mirror up to us as an organisation about what we do that can get in the way of disabled employees performing at their best. And the other is advising us on policies that we need to improve or need to change or adapt. And I guess the third one, which is an unintended consequence, is that they're great ambassadors for Network Rail. So they will extol the virtues of us as an organisation. And it's really from Can Do that we got into the assistive technology of text help. We had an individual who wanted us to purchase some software, and we looked at what their requirements were. They were a dyslexic individual, and also an individual with dyslexia, and we identified that in purchasing that particular software, it made much more sense to take up a corporate license. So this is good for us because actually we made quite a significant saving of £200,000. So the corporate license fee was a one-off of £120,000. The formats that we have: desktops, laptops, and iPads, and iPhones and smartphones, which is great. So that 120k is compared to £350 per individual. So we're really pleased with that savings. We've had 916 requests for the software, which is for us is great. So if you remember at the beginning I said we had 2% disabled people, this is unearthed or reveals people that haven't necessarily told us that they were disabled employees. So we were really pleased with the take up of this particular software. So what did our people say? So one of the clear things was about helping people to do their work. So they've been able to read and do reports on the go at their own pace, and that has given people a real great confidence. The other great thing is that they don't need their line manager's permission to acquire the software. So you just download it and get access to it whenever they want, and that's been fantastic for people. So that's given them a sense of autonomy over the software. As I mentioned, they can use it anyway. So we are a safety critical organisation, so we don't encourage the use of hands-free devices, but what we're finding people on trains utilising it in their office spaces at home. So that's really great. Another unintended consequence is that people who haven't necessarily identified themselves as neurodiverse are using it as well. So they've seen their colleagues use it for their reports and asked what kind of software is that, and download it for themselves. It's made a real difference in terms of people's confidence and competence, and we've seen people be much more proactive about participating and being engaged, and that's great. And it's also quite discreet. So as I said earlier, if people haven't said that they've got a neurodiversity condition, then that's really made it great for them. And at the core to that, it's made people's lives easier. And that's what you kind of want for your workforce. So we're really pleased with that. So what are our next steps? So we've got a picture there on supporting disability in the workplace, which is we produce a series of guides which are for helping our people understand how they can implement diversity inclusion. And this one in particular is around making reasonable adjustments. And in this guide, we talk about taking a very people-centered approach, collaborating with individuals, having a conversation around the range of adjustments that you might need, and really encouraging people managers and their employees to have a really good conversation about what a reasonable adjustment might be. I think traditionally we have thought in our business that a reasonable adjustment might be a really big thing and might be really costly. However, each individual has a different requirement. So that's really important to us, that we get our people managers into that confidence space where they are can explore the art of the possible rather than necessarily be daunted by something that they think they might have to do. We're also clear that we want to make sure that everyone matters, which is going to be the title of our next strategy. And this is really about saying that the extent to which you are disabled or the nature of your disability, it matters to us, and it matters in a positive way, in that we want to make sure that we create an environment in which you feel included, in which you feel you're really able to perform and to do your best. And we will do what we need to do to make sure that we create those conditions adequately. We're also looking at being quite deliberative about neurodiversity much more. So all of those 6 things that you voted on in the poll that Nicola did earlier, we have in place. We've got quiet spaces. We're looking at our physical environment. We look at our recruitment. The next bit to do then is for us is to be much more deliberative around neurodiversity, because we have particular disciplines like trained timetabling, like engineering, which really require very detailed looks. And we've done some pilot work on that, and we're looking to roll that out in the future. So that's been our approach to neurodiversity. We're really pleased with the uptake of the assistive technology, primarily because we hadn't anticipated the volume of use and the fact that there are unintended consequences in terms of the range of people that are utilising it, which are not only people who are neurodiverse, but other people as well. So thank you for that, and I'll pass you on to Louise.
Thank you, Lorraine. That was great. It was great to hear about the practical examples that you have done in the organisation, and congratulations as well on being #1 inclusive employer. I suppose it does put an aspect of pressure to keep it up, but it really shows them the hard work that you've put in as well. And I think what you've highlighted there as well, you know, having the guides in place so that people know the support is there, I think is really important to actually providing an inclusive environment. So I'm just going to finish up here with a couple of different points, just so we have time for questions towards the end. But we've looked very much around the different benefits of supporting somebody with neurodiversity. But actually, if we look at it beyond the right thing to do, there is actually some legal implementations available as well. If we just look quickly at the Equality Act of 2010, so this is kind of where your legal obligation comes in. So above and beyond doing the right thing and actually creating that inclusive environment, that inclusive workplace and the reputation, there is actually those requirements you have to meet. I think we're all fairly familiar with the different aspects of equality now. We have obviously your age, gender, race, religion, and disability obviously being one of those. But with the work that we do in TextHelp, we're meeting with a number of organisations from a range of different sectors, private sector, public, health, non-for-profits, all of which organisations are coming across different challenges and different aspects of diversity that they want to try and address. Lorraine obviously touched on how the disclosure of disabilities in the workplace is still very low, and that's something that we're trying to work with a number of organisations to try and change, both within your workplace environment, but also outside in your reputation. If you have candidates coming to your job, so if you're trying to hire those diverse candidates into your organisation, it's no longer where candidates will just come for an interview and sort of ask you about information. Candidates are doing their own research, and if they know you as an employer are not inclusive, if not providing support to them individually, when other organisations perhaps are, it can actually be a barrier for you hiring those specific skill sets that you're looking for. And also in terms of retaining your staff and actually making them feel confident in the work that they're doing. If staff are stressed, under pressure, if they're not feeling they're getting support from the workplace, you will more than likely end up losing, in many cases, valuable resources within your organisation. And in that case, if somebody's coming into your organisation, this is what work can look like for them on a daily basis. It's a challenge, it can be daunting, there's no end in sight, but what we want to try and do with the work we're doing with TextHelp, and as Lorraine has touched on, is make the workplace look a little bit more like this. So if you look at many buildings, they all have a ramp into your building. Again, it's a legal requirement to have disability access into your building, but if you look at who's using that ramp, which was designed primarily for somebody in a wheelchair, you will have parents with prams, you will have cyclists, you will have delivery personnel, all using a support tool that was used or designed, primarily for one group. So again, we're looking at assistive technology as a digital ramp to the information that you're trying to share and for the information that people are trying to create as well. So again, creating that inclusive work environment and making your organisation a place that people want to work in and want to stay with. So we'll draw our presentation then to a close at this stage. So thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, Nicola, for the information you've presented so far. I think at this stage, we're going to hand back to Dan, who's going to take us through some of the questions. So Dan, if I can hand back to you.
Thank you very much. We do have time. I know some of you have been sending questions through on the question function already, but please do keep sending those through. I'm going through them at the moment. We'll put them to the right person. I think because we've had a couple regards network well, and because it was one of the practical examples, I'll put one to Lorraine first of all, and it's regarding advice for those that are on the webinar today who are considering the disability confidence scheme. So as a disability confident leader, Lorraine, Network Rail is responsible for encouraging other organisations to gain disability confident status. When you were going about this, in what ways did you do this, and what advice would you give to others hoping to do so?
That's a really great question, and yes, that we are proud of our status and proud to promote it to other people. So what it required of us is really to look at our processes in terms of recruitment and to understand where there were barriers that we put in place that may inhibit disabled people in particular. So looking at some of the criteria that we set out, looking at how we explain that criteria, whether some of the criteria was really essential, or was it just something that we had traditionally required of people but actually we didn't really need. And so we had to be quite rigorous on ourselves to strip out some descriptions and some requirements that actually were pretty either traditional or obsolete, really. And that's a really good opportunity for us then to look at our job descriptions and to say, actually, what is it that we're really trying to do, and what do we need people to do? And then to make that more simpler and more easily understood. And then alongside looking at our job descriptions was also the interview process, and thinking, how can we make sure that that's as inclusive as possible, and where we can create a situation where people need more time. Is that fine? Can we make our online process more accessible so that people can submit their applications more easily? So it's a really robust way of assessing what you're doing, documenting it so you can see a really good, clear process flow, and testing it at each stage to make sure that there aren't any unnecessary requirements, and that what you're saying is really clearly understood. So I think any organisation going through that process then is confident that it is able to attract more disabled people. And then allied to that, you promote that you're doing it. So you don't just stop at making your processes easier to go through. You tell others, and that's what we are keen to do. I hope that's helpful, Dan.
No, that's a very wide-ranging answer. I'd like to break it down as well into different parts of network Rail's work process, including the recruitment process as well. So whilst different employers, including yourself, are differentiating the workplace for neurodiverse groups, how has this changed or altered your recruitment process, and what are the benefits you've seen, if there are any? I'm going to assume that there are in this instance.
Yeah. I mean, I think the difference is that we're much more, literally confident that we can support anybody coming into our workplace. So whereas before, I think we may have had a bit of an anxiety, a worry that we couldn't support disabled people. Now we're really clear about what we can do, and that actually it's a lot easier than we had thought before, because we've got systems in place that enable us to ask the right questions, be open, enable people to ask questions of us. So we've got a graduate screen where we've seen disabled candidates actively ask questions about how they will be supported through the scheme. And so therefore we're much more open to a wider range of people, and a wider range of people are now looking at us as a potential employer, which is exactly what we want. So those are the kind of benefits of it. And for our disabled employees too, they're more confident that they're going to have access to opportunities that maybe before they might have hesitated about, and we might also have hesitated because we wouldn't have felt necessarily that we could provide the right support. So I think going through that process of reviewing what you're doing gives you better confidence and clarity about where there might be glitches in the system so you can change them, and also what you're doing well that you can promote. Does that respond to your question, Dan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lorraine. I'm going to break it out to Nicola and Louise now. We've had a few comments through saying that often people with specific neurodiverse conditions, such as autism, don't consider themselves as disabled or neurodiverse, just different. And how can making these changes then in your workplace make them feel that they do have a neurodiverse condition and it is okay to ask for help or to ask for a differentiated workplace?
Yeah, I think it very much boils down to the employer and that sense of environment that they're working in. If an employee feels that they can approach their manager with this topic, which can sometimes still be quite sensitive for a lot of people, in some cases they may have struggled with this through school, they may have had challenges through their education and disclosing that information, so that may be difficult for them to actually address this. So I think it really does come down to the organisation and the employer really outline that this is a space where you can open up and disclose. And it is very much, we don't talk about disability, it is neurodiversity. You think differently, process information differently. So again, coming back to just what is in place to actually outline what it is and the support you need. Just touching on what Lorraine had spoke about as well, having a guide like the reasonable adjustments, I think is great. Having that as part of your induction process. So actually for somebody who may not class themselves with a disability, but yet from the get-go, you know what is available to you. And again, what we have touched on in a number of roles and work that we have done with different organisations, what initially enters an organisation as a disability support can then be moved on to a productivity tool. So it is taking away that disability tag and actually making it just a workplace tool that everybody can use at any stage. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
No, it does, thank you. I think leading on from that as well, and I'm happy to break this out to all of our panelists, is that if you are giving help or changing the environment or changing something about the process, should this be given discreetly or should this be open? Maybe even it should be an open policy that this is now happening. What's the best way?
So at Network Rail, we're very open that we want everyone to perform at their best. And we're very open that we want to encourage people to share if there are any barriers that we have created so that we can remove them. So that the label is almost irrelevant, but that we are encouraging you to share if you have a challenge doing a particular task, what is it that we could do to make that easier for you. And so being open about that, as Louise said, is really important, because you're creating a space and permission for people to share what they need in order for them to perform at their optimum best. And so I think it's really crucial that you're open and receptive and you respond accordingly. And similarly, you're kind of proactive in that, and by saying actively to people, this is what we do. So when we introduced our reasonable adjustments campaign, we had a 6-month lead-in with different case studies of different individuals who'd used the assistive technology, had different types of adjustments, where they could say, actually, we didn't think we were disabled in particular, but we know we needed some assistance, and this is what Network Rail did. And we also shared situations where we hadn't been that effective and what our learning was from that. So I think that openness gives people permission and encourages people to share what they require of you as an employer, and that's crucial.
Thank you, Lorraine. I guess as a last question then, and it's almost the reverse of that, because I'm aware that we're about to run out of time, is that Lorraine has just given us all a very good view of the employer side. As an employee, if I had a condition such as autism and did not know if I should share my condition or how to go about it in the organisation, are there any hints and tips for doing so? Again, I'll open it up to all of our panelists.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of that is potentially associated. So we looked earlier at the kind of gap in employment with people, you know, particularly with autism, is quite a big gap, and I think part of that is potentially to do with public understanding around autism. So, you know, understanding what kind of complexities they're encountering on their day-to-day life. So I think that the kind of around staff awareness training, so helping people to understand the complexities that people with autism are actually experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And then also, I suppose, training for neurodivergent people to understand the workplace better and help them to understand the challenges that they might encounter within the workplace and how they basically approach those and the different kind of coping mechanisms. And I think everything we've kind of been highlighting throughout the webinar leads back to kind of nurturing this open environment where people feel like they can kind of open up. And actually, I suppose an interesting point around a case study. I was at an event recently that PwC were presenting at, and they talked about kind of opening up around mental health issues. So they got some of their senior leaders to come on board and do videos of themselves and talking about the challenges of mental health and basically how they've walked through those, and then adding the videos to the staff intranet for everyone to see, which is just normalizing you know, mental health and mental ill health. And I think the same kind of concept can be applied to neurodivergence basically in the workplace.
I would absolutely concur with what Nicholas said. I think from an employee's point of view, it's that environment that says actually it's okay to ask for help, and that's what we need to do more of. We've also got an employee network, which is a really useful site for individuals that can say, actually, how did you cope with this? What did your line manager do? Or what could I do? What could I ask for? And I think it's really for us as employers and colleagues, because after all we work with these are people that we work with on a day-to-day basis, is to keep checking in and make it part and parcel of the regular conversation. You know, some people, particularly you're neurodiverse, we had somebody who didn't know they were dyslexic, but they had created a whole range of coping mechanisms that they've been using for 30 years. Then they got the assisted technology. It was like, oh, it's opened up a whole range of possibilities for them, and you know, really life-changing things, small but really impactful. So I think it's for us to, you know, we might notice certain ways of people working that might be slightly different, and it's just to ask people, you know, how comes you do it like that? Is there a different way? Could we help you? And that curiosity and inquisitiveness about people's well-being, I think, is at the crux of helping people who are neurodiverse to perform even better.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody. I think that's a very nice part to end on, is the communication around this subject that is incredibly important on the employer side, primarily. So could I just give a warm thank you to Nicola, Lorraine and Louise, who've spoken excellently on which is a very, very important subject today, showing the benefits of being neurodiverse and the ways in which you can improve the lives of those that do have or from different neurological backgrounds, I guess, or come from a different point of view. Their contact details are on the holding slide that we have at the moment, so please do get in contact if you have any more questions about text help solutions or about becoming a disability confident leader as well from Lorraine's point of view. We will be sending out the slides and the webinar to you afterwards. I know there's a lot of details on some of the slides, particularly around different neurodiverse conditions that a lot of you were asking questions about, so we will send the slides out afterwards. So that's a thank you from me. A thank you to our presenters today, and have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.